I can do what's called a subject access data request. Now, for the princely sum of €6.85, I can request every piece of information that Twitter holds on me, and they're obliged to provide everything they have within 21 days. That includes any information that led to the decision-making about suspensions or about removing my verified check. So we've done that. They now have 20 days left to respond.
Why do you want that? What do you think that's going to reveal?
Well, I want Twitter to be honest with its users about the reasons for suspensions, bannings, and all the other punitive actions they take on their platform. Twitter hasn't been honest so far. I'd like to force the hand a little bit, because I think users deserve to know.
You say you haven't gotten a clear picture of why you were banned? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, of course not. The reasons they gave were garbage. Look, what you want to understand about Twitter is it has a CEO who behaves in some ways very childishly, using the network like his own private political fiefdom. That is not what investors want. It is not what users want. And one of the consequences of that is if you make the wrong joke about the wrong person, you could find yourself banned. Like me, like Azalea Banks, the rapper, they will come for anyone. This is a big problem because this utility, which is how Dorsey has always described it, how he has wanted Twitter to be perceived, is actually being run across nakedly partisan political lines.
I don't think they see it as partisan. I think they see it as trying to restore civility.
But that's a problem, you see. When you start using these weasel words, Dorsey said that yesterday in the question and answer session, they want a civil level of discourse. Well, who's to say what's a civil level of discourse? Plenty of people enjoy the rough and tumble of political debate. People enjoy tabloid journalism. People enjoy all sorts of different kinds of discourses. If Twitter wants to start regulating how we can speak, the tone in which we can have debates, the language we can use, it's going to find that all of the interesting people on its network, all the creators, all the most fascinating personalities are going to leave.
The stock is down sharply today.
13%.
13% and down almost 30% year to date.
Yes.
Do you think why do you think that is?
Well, Dick Costolo had a relatively good reputation, the previous CEO, who was ousted by the board, for maintaining freedom of speech and not clamping down too much on freedom of expression. Dorsey does not have that reputation. Twitter is tanking for a number of reasons. One of them is it might not be possible to monetize it at all. And investors are starting to realize that and getting a little bit shaky about the stock. It might not be possible to monetize Twitter's product whatsoever. It definitely isn't possible to monetize it without freedom of speech. And what they're doing to drive all of the most interesting personalities away from the platform, in my view, is going to stall user growth even more drastically than the terrible product they have.
You said you were here to cover the Bernie supporters?
Love the Bernie supporters.
As opposed to Hillary or anything else. Why do you love the Bernie supporters?
Well, we have a lot of people here, as we did last time. I love the Bernie supporters. They're our kind of people. They hate the establishment. They hate the crony capitalism. They hate the Washington elites. Many of the same things that articulate Trump supporters. Not everybody at Breitbart is a Trump supporter, but I am. And I tend to get on reasonably well with a lot of Bernie supporters.
But I know you're an arch-capitalist, right? And I think a lot of them are socialists.
Well, some of them. Obviously Bernie support, like every other politician's support, goes down in a few little brackets, right? So there are the crazy social justice, wacky feminists, the Black Lives Matter, the campus loons. They support Bernie, by and large. There are hardcore socialists. They support Bernie, by and large. But there's a significant portion of Bernie supporters, which could be as high as 50% of his support, that just want to see the establishment bleeding. And many of Trump's voters are motivated by some of the same instincts.
Speaking of Donald Trump, today, he literally said that he hopes the Russians find Hillary Clinton's 30,000 emails. And Hillary Clinton's campaign people have said Donald Trump is asking a foreign adversary to hack. You're laughing.
I mean, I am laughing because the guy's a political genius. I mean, of course that's what they're saying. And the New York Times dutifully repeated the Hillary Clinton party line, that on Twitter they're all up in arms about it, very high-minded and shocked and pearl-clutching. What's the reality here? They're doing it anyway. What Trump is doing with this statement is just drawing people's attention back to the fact that Hillary Clinton was sloppy and lazy, let's put it in the kindest possible terms.
You're not horrified that he's telling the Russians to look for her emails?
I don't know if he means it. I think it's just a brilliant piece of political theater. The guy's a genius.
Hey CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos packed with all of the information that you need to be smarter about your finances. You can subscribe by clicking right here and click on all the videos around me or the eye right here to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.
In the studio now is Milo Yiannopoulos, a columnist for conservative news website Breitbart. Milo, you're very welcome to the program this hour. Donald Trump claims he's incredibly popular with the gay community, and comments to that effect have got short shrift online. What makes him think that he's got their support?
Well, what's interesting about Trump is the message that he has against political correctness, which has been such a cancer infecting the political left, should be a message that homosexuals are receptive to. After all, the best thing about gay culture is the dissidence, the subversion, the mischief. And when you couple that with what happened in Orlando recently and the left's total failure to stick up for gay people, and instead its insistence on pandering to radical Islam, you see quite obviously why gay people, who I think are natural libertarians, and are gravitating towards Trump. All over West Hollywood, there were these posters coming out the last couple of days, you know, shoot back, the Gadsden flag, which is this great libertarian don't tread on me icon, with the rainbow a flag sort of juxtaposed behind it. I'm seeing hundreds of people emailing me and tweeting me and all the rest of it. I have a reasonably good idea of what gay people are thinking about, because I now have a sort of big enough audience that they, that I can judge how many people are feeling a particular way. I'm seeing a huge sea change, a really colossal and it should be very worrying to the left, a huge sea change among gays who are sort of voting grudgingly for Trump. They're saying, you know what, I don't like anything else the guy does, but he's the only one that's going to protect us. The aftermath of Orlando, as terrible as that crisis, that tragedy was, I think might be very, very culturally significant. In the last election in the UK, 50% of gay men told pollsters they were going to vote for the Tories, for our Conservative Party. I think something similar is about to happen in this election.
In one recent interview, Trump claimed that the tragic events in Orlando wouldn't have turned out quite as bad if more club-goers had been armed themselves. Isn't it crass to suggest that a club full of armed people, getting drunk, etc., is a good idea? I know that he did pull that back a few days later, saying that it's about guards and employees having it, but the way he said it in the first place suggested that he wanted a lot of drunk people with weapons in a club. The fact that firearms are so commonplace in the US is surely part of the problem here, isn't it?
Well, yes, but telling gay people that they should be in safe spaces and gun-free zones is the exact opposite of looking after them. Gun-free zones are safe spaces for killers. All of the big shooting tragedies recently in the US have happened in gun-free zones because they're the places the maniacs can go, knowing that no one's going to shoot back until armed response arrives from law enforcement. Now, what Trump said, everyone in the club should be armed. Well, I said a similar thing, when I first saw that, and even the NRA said maybe that's a little bit far. So, maybe it's not a good idea to have lots of guns around where people are drinking. But here's the key point. Here's the message. Progressives are telling gays that the way to deal with this is twofold. One, to deny the connection between Islam and terrorism, to deny the connection between Islam and homophobic attacks like this. You can't do that anymore after Orlando. And two, that these expressions of peace and love from dumb celebrities are somehow going to keep people safer. They're not. What will keep people safer is being honest with them about the risks, being honest with them about the perils to gay lifestyle in America. Being gay in America has become dangerous again, not thanks to the religious right, not thanks to like cis-het white patriarchal, school shooters. It's become dangerous again because of Islam. And if people are not adequately educated about this, and if people are not, told the truth, they're not able to protect themselves and protect their families. The most productive thing that I've seen come out of all of this is the Pink Pistols, which is a great organization in the US, and various other gun enthusiasts telling gay people, come down, we'll teach you how to use a gun for free, we'll teach you how to protect yourselves. Now, whether or not you think that a nightclub of gay people should necessarily have been, packed with firearms is up to you. But I'll just leave you with two thoughts. One, I don't really think that any gay club, if you've ever been to a gay club, you know what the atmosphere is like, fun, jubilant. I don't think anybody's about to start a fight and kind of pull guns on each other. I mean, the only people who would do that probably are lesbians. But the other key point here is you've got to be honest about this. If 3 people had guns, if they'd been strapped up, if they'd had concealed carry permits in that nightclub, the situation would have ended very differently, and the number of casualties could have been 2, not 50.
Just on another point you're making, following the mass shooting, you made public appearances denouncing Islam, tweeting no more Islam as well. But isn't that just spreading hate and intolerance? It's not going away. The faith, if anything, is getting stronger right around the world. And something like that, when you've got millions of people who follow the faith without violence, etc., something like that is just going to get the moderates back up against something like this and make them opposed to people, comments like yours.
I don't much care about getting moderates' backs up. What I care about is them taking ownership and responsibility for what people do in the name of their faith. And, I don't much care about people getting offended by my words. What I care about is Islam, which is a set of beliefs.
But it's not the offense. Sorry for interrupting. It's just that the fact that if they feel as if that's what's happening, you could have a risk that it's sending the message out to more Muslims, for instance, to support these killers, etc., because you're denouncing their faith, you're denouncing who they believe Muhammad is their leader. Things like that, they go a long way, don't they, in the Muslim world?
Well, you hear this sometimes from Muslim leaders, you know, and what it boils down to is like, be nice to us or we'll kill more of you. Well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't sound like sensible advice about calming down overheated rhetoric in the public square. It sounds like a threat. And frankly, I think people need to understand that the anti-gay and the anti-women problem, by the way, because I don't take any pleasure in seeing the streets of London change like they have recently with all of these people wandering around in blankets and towels. What I see is a set of beliefs profoundly antithetical to our way of life, which routinely oppresses the hundreds of millions of women who are affected by it, and which kills homosexuals. And let me be very clear about this. This is not Islamism. This is not terrorism. This is not ISIS. This is Islam. In Britain, which is not an extremist country where we're supposed to all be assimilated, 100% of Muslims, according to a Gallup poll just a few years ago, said that homosexuality was an unacceptable lifestyle choice. 52% of them want it made illegal. And for the feminists out there, I'd also like to remind you, 39% of British Muslims say that a woman should always obey her husband. What difference does my rhetoric make when 100% of Muslims already believe that homosexuality is an unacceptable lifestyle choice? That is a direct result of their belief system. Nothing I say is going to make a difference. What I want to focus on is protecting people against that threat.
Back to homosexuality, Donald Trump's also not the biggest supporter of gay people when it comes to marriage equality, is he? He once said he would consider appointing justices to overrule the landmark decision of the Supreme Court. Just your views on that.
Donald Trump is probably the most pro-gay presidential candidate in history. He is definitely the most pro-gay Republican candidate in history. So if you're somebody who believes in a small state and freedom, but you've been put off sometimes by the social attitudes of old-style Republicans, Donald Trump is for you. He was defending gay people against the Clintons 20 years ago. Hillary Clinton will do nothing for gays, and the gays who are I'm with her kind of homosexuals are dumb as sticks. They are really stupid people. This is a candidate who has done nothing for blacks, although blacks always vote for her, nothing for gays, gays always vote for her. These people are dumb and they've been brainwashed by the left. Donald Trump has repeatedly, not only in his private life, but also in his public statements, stood up for homosexuals in a way that the progressive left never has. He came out immediately after Orlando with very strong, very inspiring statements, in my view, about how we need to protect ourselves and the steps we need to take to protect gay people. What did Hillary Clinton do? Pander to and make excuses for Islam. We have to understand here, this is not like, some sort of newspaper quarrel about whether, some Christian is going to bake a cake or not. This is about people with guns who want to kill us. Christians don't do this. Muslims do. And it isn't just terrorists. It is, think about the terrorist attacks in Paris and Brussels. This was homegrown jihadists. This stuff is 2 streets away from you. And it is being taught in mosques that the government just allows to preach whatever the hell they want to. In Orlando, where that killer was, 3 weeks prior to the attack, a guy was hosted on the subject of how do we fix the homosexuality problem. This guy is on record as saying the compassionate thing to do is to kill all gays. This is not a terror thing, this is an Islam thing. And only the right is honest about this. Only Republicans are saying what actually needs to happen. And only Republicans are really doing what it takes to protect homosexuals. And the left is pandering to and making excuses for Islam over and over again. Donald Trump, in everything that we have seen from him in his career and everything that he has said since Orlando, seems to me to be the most, not just saying it and saying the nice words and having the hashtags and the rainbow avatars on Twitter, but in real terms, what will actually benefit and keep safe gay people, Donald Trump appears to me to be the most pro-gay candidate in American electoral history.
Just to put one final point to you on what you're saying, that to paraphrase in a very rough way, that Muslims are against gay people because of their religion and are calling for a crackdown. America is defined by its diversity of peoples. The LGBT community has to struggle for its rights. You know that better than anyone. Should the Muslim community really be persecuted in what's a similar way here?
We need to get away from talking about about the country in terms of the X community and the Y community. The left has done this. It has divided people for decades. It's say, oh, you're the gay community, so you get these special rights and responsibilities, and you're oppressed, and you're underprivileged, and you've been struggling. I don't know any gay people who struggle. Being gay is a massive competitive advantage these days. Sure, 50 years ago, maybe not. 50 years ago, of course, when it was outlawed by all the states, it was institutions like the Catholic Church who were protecting gay people by putting them into the clergy. But never mind. Pitting these minorities against each other is not something I did. I didn't invent this. The progressive left did. They precipitated these minority wars by setting blacks against Hispanics, gays against Muslims. Well, this is the result. This silly dream of multiculturalism driven by incompetent, idiotic globalist politicians who think that everybody is just the same as everybody else and everybody can live nicely together. Well, your peace, love, and understanding rhetoric does not influence mullahs in Iran and does not influence hate preachers in Orlando. They're going to listen to you, laugh at you, and carry on preaching hate. Because, all these hashtags hashtags on Twitter and all of the ridiculous platitudes that are pouring out of dumb celebrities and progressive politicians right now, how many Islamic radicals, fundamentalists, how many hate preachers, how many Muslims at home do you think are listening? How many lives do you think this will save? None. Gay charities, every single gay charity in America deserves to be shut down after their response to Orlando, which has been spineless and pandering. It is absolutely shocking.
That's the thoughts of Milo Yiannopoulos, a columnist for conservative news website Breitbart, and also known on Twitter to his hundreds of thousands of followers as Nero. We appreciate your time and your thoughts on this subject. Thank you.
He irritates more bowels than a plate of Chipotle. British journalist and Twitter terror, Milo Yiannopoulos. Yeah, people at the Marriott. I thought the Marriott banned it. That's why I stopped going there. Milo, don't you agree with me that this is a great opportunity for Donald Trump to hire this woman, put him, as you like to call it, daddy?
Daddy. Don't be a conservative. Call him daddy.
Okay, all right. Don't you think he should do that? Is he missing an opportunity?
Well, I mean, the guy was born in Canada. He's a softcore American. What right has he got to talk to anybody about softcore anything? I mean, the guy's such a hypocrite. It's cruel, it's mean, and worse, it's slut-shaming.
Mm-hmm.
It's slut-shaming.
Yes, it is.
This woman's trying to turn her life around. I agree completely. You know, there's really no problem with this. Is the American dream, isn't it?
It is.
You do what you can, you hustle, you make it. One day, you have the glittering vision of an appearance for 4.5 seconds in a Ted Cruz campaign video. and because you once smooched on script,
yes,
give me a break. I mean, Hollywood actresses have done worse things in blockbuster movies than this girl probably did in her videos. I find it appalling.
I'm not kidding. In Girls, which is HBO, the sex scenes are unbelievable. I watched them so many times, they disgust me. But you know what you're right? It is the American dream to do amateur porn and then turn your life around.
Yes.
Look at Kim Kardashian. Look at Paris Hilton. They all started with amateur porn.
Kat, I want to go. Is on my side.
Yeah.
Trump is saying this is a direct threat to you and your family. The elites are letting in people who are undercutting your wages, and I'm against it. Which is a more resonant message? The latter.
Yeah, that's true. Milo, I think you have a keen sense of Trump's appeal because you call him daddy.
I do.
And the thing is, I believe that Sanders and Trump...
It's not dark.
It's so dark.
I'm Trump sexual.
I know you are. I know you are. You call him daddy, and I think this is prophetic because I think Sanders is, for the left, the daddy of nurture, and for the right, Trump is the daddy who's stern. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I mean, look, any political movement that, any political personality that attracts from frat boys to veterans to Ann Coulter to, you know, sassy gay British columnists, there's something interesting. There's something interesting going on there.
Yes, that's true.
And it's something that the majority of conservative media would rather sneer and scoff about, have front covers of their magazines saying, oh no, we can't possibly endorse this, you know, horrible populist, you know, sleazy character. Well, I'm sorry, but this person has captured the energy and imagination of conservatives under 50, and conservative media has forgotten how to talk to those people. It doesn't even like them on the rare occasion it notices they exist. Mm-hmm. You know, I try to write for people who are under 50, unlike most conservative journalists, and they
thank you.
And they love him. They love him.
Yeah, that's
and
true. Do you know who else conservatives loved? Do you know who else? Adolf Stevens, my neighbor. He was a really great guy. Unity was an incredibly powerful
He never mentions you. Go to Bernie Madoff. He doesn't say anything about any of the trendy, fashionable nonsense. It's only economics.
Yeah, all right, Milo. Where do you fall on Sanders?
Well, this Democratic debate was a debate between, you know, a woman who is too old and confused to use an iPhone and a man whose credit is too bad to get one. The problem with both of them is that they just have so little grasp, really, on, you know, on any kind of economic reality. And for all of this talk about Sanders having lots of young supporters, yes, he does, but it's a tiny sliver of the population. It doesn't compare to the popular support for Daddy. And actually, what you just... I'm just saying, and what you discover is that these voters are actually quite politically promiscuous. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily care too much about policy. People don't vote for Trump or Sanders because of anything specific they say.
Right.
They vote to thumb their nose up at the establishment, to stick two fingers up at the, you know, the whole Washington thing. Mm-hmm. So my hope is that Sanders is going to cost Hillary a fortune, then drop out, and then all his supporters will come over to Daddy, and we'll win.
Come over to Daddy. Come to Daddy. That should have been his motto from day one. All right, Kat. Attention, coddled co-eds. This entire segment may be offensive to you, so here's your trigger warning. Okay. This week at Rutgers University, which I believe is in New Jersey, who knows, a guest on our panel tonight gave a speech. Milo Yiannopoulos was invited there at Rutgers to speak about how the progressive left is destroying education. While on stage, he suggested that any student who requests trigger warnings in safe spaces should be immediately expelled. Let's take a look at how the crowd reacted.
They have demonstrated that they are incapable of exposing themselves to new ideas. They have demonstrated that they are incapable of engaging in the humble pursuit of knowledge.
This man represents hatred!
It's the world. It's the world in a microcosm. That is everything that you need to know about the world. Black Lives Matter, Trump, Trump, Trump. Black Lives, I mean, why don't we just, that's it. All right, Milo.
I mean, Trump won, so yeah. Truth and justice always prevails in the end. The Trump chants did beat out the Black Lives Matter chants, so I was very happy about that.
Did you know this was going to happen?
Everywhere I go becomes a bit of a mini sensation these days, and I think it's my natural humility.
Yes.
But you know, I tend to bring the internet to life in my audiences. You know, so I get the Black Lives Matter, I get the feminists, I get the Trump supporters. You know, my fans are very sort of a wonderful dysfunctional coalition of people. Anyway, so yeah, I was making what I thought was a relatively uncontroversial point, which is that universities should be centres of learning.
Yeah.
And this was apparently enough for these feminists to say, this man spews hatred and smear themselves with red blood, assault somebody afterwards, and then Black Lives Matter started stopping people getting home when they're outside, which nobody has footage of. But yeah, just absolutely crazy. I mean, American university campuses are nuts.
So here's the thing, Tucker. I believe that what Milo is doing is not a speech, it's performance art. He is actually proving his premise by simply showing up. He actually instigates the problem that he's talking about, right?
It doesn't take much. These people have a hair trigger, smearing red paint on their faces.
We hope it's red paint.
I kind of like it.
And you heard because
isn't that like a directed? Isn't that like culture appropriation for the American Indians? Isn't that
Red Indians?
Yeah.
And they were doing Black Power as well, weren't they? With the red faces like this.
And what about the people who can't afford paint? They're at home.
They spontaneously bleed.
No, they spontaneously. That's it. That's it. Yes, stigmata.
I want to ask the janitor who had to clean that up. How privileged
that's the story.
I mean, really, that's the height of entitlement, to not clean up your mess.
That is so true. They're like rock stars trashing hotel rooms, or legendary actors, Stephen.
I've never known an actor to.
By the way, we put you at the Hyatt for a reason.
No, I've never been there.
You wrote your initials on the wall, and that wasn't blood. Hey, when you were in college, did you ever, I mean, what is happening? You were in college in the 80s, I imagine?
You know, I was in college at a time when people were actually learning something.
Yes.
And that's a long time ago. And just shows how old I am. But what's happened is that the educators, the people, the professors have, I don't know where they came from. They came from another generation.
They were students.
Yeah.
You know what it is? It's like a virus that's just passed down.
It just perpetuates this
and then
mindset.
These kids will have no discernible talents, so they'll have to become those professors.
And they're going to be voters soon, which is really scary.
Kat, you've been following this stuff a lot. What's your take on this? Surprised, disappointed, aroused?
You know, everybody knows that the best way to get people to take you seriously and your point of view seriously is to just smear a bunch of fake blood on your face and start screaming. It's very intellectual. I think that's what Trump should start doing in the debates if he wants to win, if Cruz attacks him. Just smear blood on his face, start screaming, and then Cruz will say, can't argue with that, and then boom, he's president.
There you go. See, we learned something there. Very little, actually, but we learned something. Okay, we learned nothing. Up next, we're going to talk about Twitter's new safety council that cracks down on so-called harmful speech. And James Woods launched this $10 million defamation suit against an anonymous Twitter user who called him a cocaine addict. Will Twitter be forced to reveal the identity of that user? And is it Joanne? That's next. They're wheeling and dealing to prevent hurt feelings. This week, Twitter announced the creation of a trust and safety council to ensure users, quote, feel safe expressing themselves. What? The council's comprised of over 40, mostly liberal organizations, including the Anti-Defamation League, GLAAD, and something called the Dangerous Speech Project, which sounds like the name of my Fish tribute band. While proponents say the council will help Twitter prevent harassment and bullying, critics argue it can be used to squash certain political viewpoints, like mine, and even censor free speech. And another Twitter free speech news actor and my Pilates partner, James Woods, stepped closer to unmasking a Twitter user who called him a cokehead last year. Woods sued him for defamation. The anonymous defendant tried to get the $10 million suit dismissed, but the judge said the case can proceed, and everyone celebrated with an 8-ball. I'm joking. Don't sue me. All right, Stephen, what's happening?
Everybody knows nobody uses cocaine anymore.
That's
so the suit has got to be.
And you were literally in Scarface.
I was in Scarface, and I can tell you that it's been about 35 years.
Yes. Yes. You don't even remember Scarface.
No. But the other thing is about Jimmy, and I can call him Jimmy because I know him. He's a very big brainy guy.
Yeah.
And he's very courageous, and he says things that people don't like to hear. So it makes sense that someone would maybe overhear him and accuse him of doing some drug.
Yeah. That's so true.
Because he's smart.
No, it's because he's conservative and everybody thinks you're on drugs. You have to be on, if you're conservative, you're on drugs. In Hollywood, that is. Tucker, thoughts on this? Should it be anonymous?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for privacy. But what really strikes me is the assault on free speech by the left. This is a huge change. When I was a kid, I'm not that old, liberals were flaky and they were into macrobiotic food and all yoga and all that stuff. But they, in the end, they really kind of did support your right to say something they disagreed with. Now they don't. And that's where the conversation ends. You can't even have a conversation with someone who doesn't acknowledge your right to have a divergent view. That becomes fascism. That is actually a threat to America for real. Like all the other crap aside, that is the core of it. They threaten their threat.
No, you're right, though. The worst thing a leftist was guilty of was like buying a natural deodorant that didn't work.
Right, and it never did work.
Yeah, it never did work. It never did work, but we loved him for it anyway. Milo, what do you make of this safety council? I think it's directed at you.
No, it's literally all about me.
Yes, it is.
It is. I'm why it happened. Yes. And you know how I know this? Yes. Is there's this crazy woman called Anita Sarkeesian from Feminist Frequency, this far-left, wacky video games critic who would never have been on there if it hadn't been for me, and me getting unverified because I got the wrong opinions on Twitter. They took my check mark away. Can you believe that?
No.
It's like buying a business class ticket and then you get on the plane and they tell you to turn right. I felt disgusting for weeks.
What was it like back there in the unverified section?
It's awful. The food is terrible.
It's like a cattle car.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is Orwellian, and it's terrifying. They've started to give ideological slaps on the wrist, these networks, and then you've got Facebook teaming up with Merkel in Germany to censor discussion about immigration. Perfectly reasonable, respectable mainstream opinions about the 1.5 million Muslims that are coming into Germany, and Facebook says, Angela, you just tell us, and within 24 hours we'll take it off the network. This is scary stuff.
But we do have to remember, though, that Twitter is a business, okay? So their stock is down.
Yeah.
They've lost 2 million users recently.
Thank God.
And so what do you do when you're a business that's like, oh, we need to make more money? You look at the complaints, which are often, in this case, bullying and harassment, and then you try to appease those people who are complaining and try to get more people to come in. So Twitter is not some, model of morality. They are a business who's trying to make money, and this is their solution to their problem.
My problem with Twitter is I'm only on it when I'm drunk. And then the next day I wake up and I go, what in God's name have I done? And then I get to work and there's an email from somebody saying, we need to talk to you about something. Kat, my guess is that you get harassed all the time on Twitter, but I also guess that you probably deserve it.
I do get harassed all the time, but it doesn't bother me emotionally like people complain about, because some people, they say, love comes from within. My self-hatred comes from within. It's got nothing to do with those people. And if the people can't handle being on Twitter, don't be on Twitter. Go play an acoustic guitar at a coffee shop in Brooklyn or Portland and cry into your tea or whatever. But just get off of it, because you know what? It's not that big of a deal that I'm called a horrible, horrible slut every day. To me, it's fine. It's like, all right, whatever, your profile avatars of a dog.
Don't go anywhere.
We want to also ask you about the alt-right. In a recent speech, Hillary Clinton basically referred to you and other people, didn't name you directly, but she quoted the Wall Street Journal. She said, alt-right is short for alternative right. The Wall Street Journal describes it as a loose but organized movement, mostly online, that, quote, rejects mainstream conservatism, promotes nationalism, and views on immigration and multiculturalism as threats to white identity. The de facto merger between Breitbart and the Trump campaign represents a landmark achievement for the alt-right. Are you the alt-right? And what is the alt-right?
No, I mean, I've never identified as the alt-right. The press seems determined to crown me the queen of it. All I've done is give them a fair hearing in the press. I think that white identity and white nationalism is a little misleading. I think it's more accurate to say that the alt-right cares about Western supremacy rather than white supremacy. It cares about Western values. It cares about liberal, capitalist, Western democracy, democratic values, freedom, equality, that kind of thing. And it sees, various threats to those on various fronts.
So when Donald Trump talks about preventing immigrants, preventing Muslims from coming into the country, a lot of people see that as racist. You don't think that's racist?
They're entitled to, but all I can tell you is, as a gay man, I'm quite reassured by Donald Trump's, entreaties toward American values and his skepticism about Islamic immigration. When Hillary Clinton quotes my headlines, and suggests that this is some kind of sinister, dark underbelly of American society.
What do you mean by American values?
Well, the First and Second Amendment, freedom of speech, free expression, the right to be, do, and say whatever you want. These are the values that have made America the greatest country in the history of human civilization. These are values that are not compatible with some of the Islamic immigration that we see in Europe. And I guess I'm over here as a warning from Europe, saying please don't go the same way as Germany and the UK.
If you are, or if you're not part of the described alt-right, do you, as a gay man, feel comfortable in it? That the people who embrace other elements of what we just described as the alt-right. You know what I'm driving at.
Yeah, I understand the question.
Do you feel comfortable in it?
The press seems determined to label the alt-right this misogynist, hateful, racist, homophobic, anti-Semitic movement, and yet at the same time tries to crown, a gay Jew who never shuts up about his black boyfriends as the leader of it. Something isn't quite right
Can
here.
you concede that the alt-right actually attracts those groups of people?
I think there's some overlap on the very, very fringes. And I wrote a very good guide to the alt-right for anyone who's really interested in this. I think it's the only, and I say it's very good, but I think it's the only example in journalism, really so far, of somebody trying to give an accurate and fair guide to the contours of the movement rather than virtue signaling about saying, oh, racism is bad. Yeah, we know that. I want to know what this movement actually consists of. And so I wrote an establishment conservative's guide to the alt-right. What it is you're getting wrong that the new Republican base, the Trump guys, the alt-right, the Twitter kind of meme and troll brigade, what it is that they're seeking, what they're searching for, what they like and what they don't like.
What are they searching? What are they searching for?
Well, I think there's a sense, aside from the policy positions, and I do think that Trump is tapping into something with immigration stuff, with trade, and Ann Coulter, for instance, her analysis is that people like Trump for the policies. Mine is a little different. I think that people are getting a little sick on all sides of the political divide of the nannying safe space culture from the left, of the language policing, saying everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic when we know it isn't. And that kind of chilling effect on culture, on freedom of expression, even on journalism, has started to become very obvious. And I don't think voters like it very much.
What would America look like with an ascendant alt-right, with a Trump in the White House and a Mr. Bannon as the chief of staff? And,
it would be so much more fun.
Well, it might well be.
It might, and laughter.
It would be more spontaneous, let's say.
Pepe in the White House.
Would it be meaner?
It would be fantastic. It might be a little meaner, but we could do with a bit of meanness in American society. This cult of being nice all the time and not saying what we really think, not saying what's actually happening. I mean, the reason that people like me get upset about political correctness is that it kills, is that it results in horrible things happening. Whether it's San Bernardino or Sandy Hook or whatever, people say, oh, well, we knew, but we didn't go there. We didn't say anything because we didn't want to seem racist. What's the one? Rotherham in the UK, right? 1,400 young girls were raped over 10 years. And the government report said that the reason nobody reported on this, the reason nobody did anything about it, is that the police and the authorities were scared of seeming Islamophobic because those 1,400 girls were all raped by Pakistani rape gangs. That is an example of political correctness with victims, with real-world consequences. And that's, the serious end of political correctness. That's the real end. Aside from the memes and the jokes and the meanness on Twitter, that's the kind of stuff that I really object to. And that's the kind of stuff I think that a lot of Trump voters don't like either.
Speaking of Twitter.
Yes.
Board meeting today. There's talk that they may sell the company or they're going to try to convince.
Well, they could try. I mean, who would want it? I mean, who would want Twitter? And to say nothing of what, look, Twitter is systematically having a go at conservatives. There's even chatter online of them having a race problem. There are people saying that Twitter has a race problem. It doesn't like white people very much. It's got this black supremacist, Black Lives Matter hashtag up in its San Francisco offices. You may find that argument a little far-fetched, but there are plenty of people making it. That raises the specter of antitrust, and Cruz would probably be up for that. I mean,
Come on.
There's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of things that can happen. Jack Dorsey is very clearly checked out of this business. He doesn't care. He's not interested, and the business is tanking. They're losing their users. And as I spoke to you about at one of the conventions, my analysis of Twitter is that the conventional wisdom is 180 degrees wrong on this. Everybody, the media and journalists, everybody is telling us that the problem with Twitter is too much trolling, too much meanness, too much quote-unquote abuse and harassment. I see the problem as exactly the reverse. When Twitter started cracking down on free speech, the platform started failing, and that is the history of social networks. That rule has never been broken in the history of social networks.
Was there a single tweet or a series of tweets that got you banned from Twitter, and in your version of what could be a more fun world? Would those tweets have been okay? I guess they would have been.
I mean, I told the Wall Street Journal that Leslie Jones, the subject of the new Ghostbusters movie, looked remarkably like one of my ex-boyfriends, which she does. And I said that it was nice that they'd cast a hot black dude in the movie. You know, these are the kind of like, oh, fine, a gay guy's catty, you know, stop the presses. This is not a reason to get somebody off Twitter. They did it for political reasons. They've been waiting for an excuse for a long time. What I actually did was wrote a very long, very good, very brutal and bitchy, but I thought ultimately quite fair review of a very bad feminist movie, and that because it had a
what do you think of Colin Kaepernick?
Oh, God, I'm so bored about hearing about this silly grandstanding. You know, there's those moments when, you know, you have the national anthem, when everybody comes together, despite their political differences, race, gender, you know, politics, whatever. Those are the moments when you're supposed to be respectful of your fellow players, of the audience, of everybody around you. Come together for that moment and say, okay, these are the things we believe in. You know, let's go do this,
but
guys.
That seems to run against
Yeah, I think it's contradictory.
Run against your thought that we should be less respectful and less.
Oh, no, I think we should be hugely respectful of free speech and freedom of expression.
In a way, you know.
No. Look, I don't want to get too uptight about it, because I don't care about some sportsman, as I started out to say, I don't care about some sportsman.
You're bored with him.
Having a little, like, tantrum, hissy fit spectacle, okay? What I would like, though, is that when our sportsmen and celebrities do things like this, and all eyes are on them afterwards, I would like them to actually say something of substance, like have a real argument, rather than just these lefty talking points. And by the way, the reason sales of his shirt are going up is because people are burning them.
But you do support his right to do what he did.
Of course, I just think he's an idiot.
Hey CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos packed with all of the information that you need to be smarter about your finances. You can subscribe by clicking right here and click on all the videos around me or the eye right here to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.
Monday, Ghostbusters actor Leslie Jones quit Twitter following a series of racist and sexist attacks. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey reached out to Jones directly, and the social media company promised to take action. One day later, Milo Yiannopoulos, a conservative writer for Breitbart.com, was permanently suspended from Twitter. Although the company did not specifically cite the conflict with Jones, the suspension came after Yiannopoulos posted this tweet to his more than 380,000 followers. If at first you don't succeed because your work is terrible, play the victim. Everyone gets hate mail, FFS. Which I assure you does not stand for French fries and salad. Joining us now is Milo Yiannopoulos, technology editor with Breitbart.com.
Thanks for having me.
You've been permanently banned from Twitter.
I have.
You've been pretty mean through the years on Twitter.
I've been pretty mean through the years on Twitter, but I don't think that's a reason to excise somebody from the platform. You know, actually, plenty of people enjoy what I do. Over 380,000 of them, as you say, enjoy what I do. And there's certainly no suggestion whatsoever that I was involved in any kind of racist or sexist harassment of Leslie Jones. What I did was dislike her movie and write a very critical review that she didn't like. After that, I teased her a little on Twitter. If a journalist can't tease a Hollywood blockbuster actress, I don't know what this platform is about. You know, it's a very strange thing.
You saw it all, many of your followers, not all, but many of your followers started to attack her as well. I mean, some of those things were brutal. Wouldn't you acknowledge?
Yes, of course. And some of them were completely disgusting. But I'm not responsible for what other people post on the internet. Is Justin Bieber responsible when his fans cut themselves with the hashtag #CutForBieber? Is Beyonce responsible when her fans go after One Directioners with death threats and rape threats? Of course not. It's preposterous to suggest that a public figure, an entertainment personality, or a prominent journalist is responsible for what other people post on the internet.
Let me read to you what you wrote in 2012 at the Kernel.
Sure.
It was a longer piece. The internet is not a universal human right. We ban drunks from driving because they're a danger to others. Isn't it time we did the same to trolls? Trolls, for our viewers who don't know, are how people refer to people like you who are mean on Twitter. And there are very many
people like meanness.
You wrote this, right?
No, of course.
This what happened? You don't agree with this anymore?
No, I agree with it entirely. You know, Twitter is a private company. It's entitled to do what it likes. The problem is it's lying to users. Jack Dorsey says that it's the free speech wing of the free speech platform, the free speech wing of the free speech party, that he wants it to be a utility like water, that Twitter is a place you go if you want to express yourself. That's a lie. There is a systematic campaign against conservative and libertarian points of view on Twitter. And how do we know this? Not from the company's own notoriously opaque statements, but from the fact that they apply their own rules so capriciously and so inconsistently that there is only one possible explanation. Twitter is perfectly happy to host ISIS, to host death threats against Donald Trump supporters, and they do nothing in any of these cases. Not hard enough. But you make a joke about a feminist, or you dislike the new Ghostbusters movie, or you have the audacity to dislike the work in, in Hollywood of somebody who happens to be black or happens to be a woman, and then you get suspended.
Well, let me read you what Twitter
absurd.
says. We had a guest on from Twitter earlier this morning who spoke about this. We also have just statements and policies are available on their website. Our rules prohibit inciting or engaging in the targeted abuse or harassment of others. Over the past 48 hours in particular, we've seen an uptick in the number of accounts violating these policies and have taken enforcement actions against these accounts, ranging from warnings that also require the deletion of tweets violating our policies to permanent suspension?
There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and Twitter has produced none that I'm in any way responsible for inciting harassment against somebody else. It's just an absurd claim, and there's no proof of it. What there is proof of is that Leslie Jones did not like my review. That I teased Leslie Jones a little bit on Twitter. Well, so sue me. I mean, what's the big deal?
But
no big deal. People do that kind of thing all the time. The reason they came for me is I have been public enemy #1 for Twitter for a very long time.
You acknowledge it's a private company. You can do it once.
Of course, but it's got to be honest with its users. And the other thing, of course,
and it can change its rules anytime it wants.
Of course, but what's going to happen if Twitter does change its rules to clamp down on all the most fun people on its network, all of the most interesting people on its network, is that people are going to leave. Twitter's investors should be very worried right now, because what they're seeing is a platform, they're very concerned with user growth, they're very concerned with the time that the users spend on the site, and they're very concerned with the engagement of their key users.
Investors and executives are concerned about just the opposite, that it's become such a mean place that people abandon it. They've struggled with growth.
But that's a separate but related problem, because Twitter's product is terrible, and Twitter's product has always been terrible.
Why is it terrible?
Well, it is a terrible experience. It is completely befuddling for users. The reason they have problems acquiring new users is that nobody understands how it works. It's not intuitive like Facebook is. And if Twitter had, at the start, built tools to deal with different groups of people who don't really want to hear from each other, this problem would never have happened.
What
the
do
problem
we do
is
about the fact that the internet has become a very mean place? Why is that? And why? And you yourself endorsed.
Well, I mean, I endorse free speech. I endorse people's right to be mean, people's right to be aggressive, people's right to be mischievous and dissident and fun.
In that piece that you wrote for the Colonel, you acknowledged how painful it can be.
Yes, but if
when you're on the receiving end.
You know what? My view is not going to be popular with everybody, but it is popular with a lot of people, and that is if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. My observation in this particular case is that this movie is not doing well. I suspect that Leslie Jones has been deployed on Twitter to play the victim.
The bigger issue, is there a decline in civility because of the internet?
Yes, but you know, one of the things that I've observed as a tech journalist, because I'm tech editor at Bright, was my day job, and I'm not embroiled in controversies like this. One of the things I've observed is there is a particular political slant to a lot of this abuse and harassment stuff. Much of it is used ideologically. Much of it is used to criticize libertarian and conservative points of view. You know what? We're all in public life. We all get criticism. We all get death threats. We all get rape threats. We all get bomb threats. But there's only one particular side of the political divide that makes hay out of them, that constantly whinges about them, that in fact turns them into a sort of career.
You are also the leader of Gays for Trump, is that correct?
Well, I'm not the leader, but I did host a party last night. It was fantastic. A party for Daddy, who I call him Daddy.
You call Donald Trump Daddy?
I
Why?
do, because I want to be the father of the nation. I've come here as a warning from Europe to you people about what happens when you clamp down too much on free speech, when you forget the key importance of the First and the Second Amendments, right? We're seeing it happen in Europe. We're seeing Islamization of Europe. We're seeing clampdowns on free speech. In Nottingham in the UK, it's now an arrestable offence to be misogynist. Well, what does that even mean? That's in the eye of the beholder. In Scotland, you can be arrested by the police for being offensive. That's really Orwellian. That's insane.
So when Donald Trump talks about banning Muslims, you don't see that as contradictory to everything you just said?
No, I don't, because
Why
because America is, America is founded on freedoms. America is founded on, on the Constitution, the First and Second Amendment, and it is modern, Western, liberal, democratic capitalism that gave women and gays and blacks the rights they enjoy. And where those things don't exist elsewhere in the world, women and gays have a much worse time. By preventing immigration from a culture that wants me dead, frankly, it is a protection of freedom,
I'm going to stop you for 1 second. We have live pictures coming in of Donald Trump's plane arriving in Cleveland. There you see, coming into town. He doesn't speak officially till tomorrow night, but Donald Trump arriving in Cleveland.
Daddy Force One.
You call it Daddy Force One?
I do. When I'm press secretary, I want Debonair Force One.
Milo Yiannopoulos.
Thanks very much.
Hey CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos packed with all of the information that you need to be smarter about your finances. You can subscribe by clicking right here and click on all the videos around me or the eye right here to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.
The dark underbelly of social media. Beyond the cat videos and all those birthday shout-outs, an alarming number of users are exploiting their platforms to spread hate. One self-proclaimed internet troll, Milo Yiannopoulos, tells us he's unapologetic and proud, even after being banned from Twitter for his infamous online taunting of Ghostbusters star Leslie Jones. He talked to ABC's Terry Moran in London.
It began as a standard Hollywood production.
Now there's sightings all over the city.
A remake of the beloved 1984 movie Ghostbusters.
Get out of my friend, Ghost!
This time with an all-female cast.
Let's go. Let's go. Oh, did you want to? Sorry, I'll let you. Next time.
One of the stars, Leslie Jones. But within a few days of the movie's release, Leslie Jones was subjected to incredibly vicious attacks on Twitter. Many of the attacks, known as trolling, came from anonymous users, but not all of them.
Are you a troll?
Of course.
What is trolling? How do you look at it?
I like to think of myself as a virtuous troll. You know, I'm doing God's work.
Milo Yiannopoulos, also known as Nero online, joined in the tormenting of Jones, calling her a man on Twitter to his 350,000 plus followers. In the Twitter storm
Sure,
that
I was
happened, you
mean
called
to-
her a dude. If Leslie Jones were right here, would
I've
you
gone
say,
native.
you look like a dude?
Yeah, probably.
You would say that
Yeah,
to her?
probably. I probably would.
Then, then you're an idiot, really. Milo, as everyone calls him, is one of the most famous or infamous trolls on the internet. He's an editor at Breitbart, the ultra-conservative news website. He accused Jones of playing the victim and later called her barely literate.
I don't say anything I don't believe, but of course I do say things in a way that is going to elicit a response from people.
Jones detailed the abusive words and images she was receiving and the racist and misogynistic slurs against her that even compared her to an ape.
Leslie Jones
my
is
God.
the equal
This
of
idea,
you or me
as
as
a
a
human being with feelings
Of course
and
she is. But this idea that celebrities are these fragile wallflowers, give me a break. You and I both know people in Hollywood.
Because she
The
acted in a
stars of
movie,
Hollywood
you rallied
blockbusters
people.
are sitting at home crying into their iPhones.
Why didn't you stand up as people called her ape, gorilla, and worse and say, guys, this is good to
Why
do,
should I have
but
to
not
police
racist.
other
not
people? Why should I have to police
Why
other
not
people's
stand
speech?
up for right?
I'm responsible.
Why not
for,
stand up for the right?
I'm responsible for what I say. I'm perfectly happy to tell you I think that stuff is disgusting.
So you had
I'm
no
perfectly happy to
obligation
tell
for your 350,000 followers.
Does Justin Bieber have an obligation to his fans?
descending on this woman?
I'm sorry for being popular, but I am not responsible for what 350,000 people on the internet say. I'm responsible for what I say.
All right.
Do you go after Selena Gomez when her fans send death threats to Justin Bieber? No. Do you go after Beyonce when her fans go after Taylor Swift? No.
The 48-year-old actress is a regular on Saturday Night Live.
Nobody writes love letters anymore.
They don't write love letters?
Well, maybe you do, you sexy creamsicle. Just want to chomp all the orange off and get to the cream.
Ghostbusters is her first starring role in a major film.
The power of pain compels you!
Leslie Jones is just one target of the self-proclaimed troll. Milo makes a career sparking outrage, spraying vitriol at many, and helping to legitimize a movement of negativity growing on the internet. One of his hot topics
when they wanted to have me removed from Pershing Square, a public space in the center of Los Angeles.
is the female physique. You're going to go after somebody's body?
Yeah.
To denigrate their ideas? What grade are you in? Seriously?
No.
Are you a 13-year-old boy?
No. Absolutely, I will, and I'll tell you why.
Because somebody
the
doesn't
body
have a
positivity-
weight that you think
it
is
is
proper?
so-
That's revolting.
No, it's not
Yes,
revolting.
it is.
No, it's not. I'll tell you what's revolting. What's revolting is the body positivity movement. What's revolting is this idea now that you can tell women that they'll be healthy at any size. Why? Because it tells women that you can be fat and you can be unattractive and you'll be happy anyway. That's a lie.
Feminists are another target.
I would rather a healthier, equitable arrangement that existed between the sexes, rather than the sort of vindictive feminism that seems to exist now. And by the way, most people agree with me. Fewer than 1 in 5 women in America describe themselves as a feminist because they see what I see.
There seem to be no limits, no holds barred for the dropout from Cambridge University in England, sometime poet, tech journalist, Donald Trump supporter, gay Catholic, and entrepreneur.
These pathological, sociopathic, feminist liars in popular culture. It is insisted upon us that we all pay obeisance to the cult of Lena Dunham and Amy Schumer. They're put on the cover of the magazines. And we're all expected to pretend that we like them. Well, we don't.
He's talking about a best-selling author and A-list movie star who also happens to have her own hit TV series, Inside Amy Schumer.
Amy? Yeah, you have the right house, 623 Supermodel Lane. Get in here, you lifesaver.
I like Amy Schumer. She's
Nobody
funny.
likes
She
them.
makes me laugh.
Oh, please.
A lot.
Oh, God. Well, you must have very low standards for comedy, I'm telling you. Not very much makes me laugh with Amy Schumer. These are terrible, talentless people that we are instructed that we must like unless... And the sort of subtext is, you know, if you don't like them, you're some kind of bigot somehow.
Milo declares himself a provocateur.
I don't entirely believe in lesbians.
A prankster. And that no one should be upset by his so-called antics.
If I'm occasionally mean, it's normally because they deserve it.
With my name-calling and with my provocation and with my bad manners, you know, I think actually America's had enough of nice manners. If my rudeness creates conversation, my rudeness provokes people into, first of all, saying, oh, what a monster, blah, 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 and then 20% of people start talking about what I was actually saying, I will consider my career to be a terrific success.
Perhaps the targeting of Leslie Jones just contributes to his idea of worldwide success. In the Twitter storm
Sure,
that happened, you called her a dude.
I said it's a good job there's a hot black dude in the movie. She looks like a man. I am entitled to say that I think a celebrity looks weird.
You think that's fair comment and
Of course
a
it's fair
decent
comment.
thing
That's
and
like
a
the
civil
definition
thing
of
to
fair
do.
comment.
You
It'll be
think
a civil
that's-
thing to do. If you don't like it, don't follow me on Twitter.
Milo Yiannopoulos represents the tip of the iceberg in a rising tide of hate and abuse in social media, one he clearly sees as a noble purpose.
Trolling is very important.
Why?
Trolling is absolutely essential. America needs more trolling because trolls are the only people who tell the truth these days.
Many join him on this crusade.
You wrote a scathing review about Ghostbusters.
I thought it was quite measured. It's just everybody else was lying that they liked the movie when nobody really did.
And then what happened?
So I exchanged some words with Leslie Jones, one of the leads, who I was unimpressed with. Like I was unimpressed with all of them. I cracked some jokes. I was mean and bitchy, like I always am. And if I crack a few jokes at a Hollywood megastar's expense, so what?
So I've printed out a couple of those. Just
Go
say,
right ahead.
Okay, so
I posted them. I'm sure I'm fine.
So
Yeah, I said the women in it were fat and ugly and fat, and they are. And I'll tell you why I find this problematic. We've started to marginalize traditional beauty standards. You know, now what we're expected to do is to celebrate body positivity and you know that it's okay to abuse their bodies, to run the risk of horrible diseases and awful chronic conditions and to die sooner. That's horrible. What I'm trying to do is draw attention to a critique of what's happening in mainstream beauty culture, and that comes from compassion about what the messages we're sending to young girls.
So is that compassionate though, saying they're fat, ugly, ugly?
The piece comes from compassion. I mean, this is just a little bit. This is a little bitchy tweet. Who cares?
Okay, so according to Jack Dorsey, though, the tweets that followed after your review of Ghostbusters, it was just too much.
There's no question that some of the things that were sent to her were horrible, but I'm not in the business of policing the 300 million people on Twitter. Now, I'm not going to endorse anything horrible that people said to her. Obviously, there were some things that were said to her that were disgusting, right? But I'm not in the business of language policing other people. I'm only responsible for what I say. And the things that you have presented to me, I'm perfectly happy to, I would say them again tomorrow.
What would you say to Leslie Jones right now if you had an opportunity to sit with her, now that kind of the dust has settled a little bit? What would you say to her?
I would say to her, you are a star of a Hollywood blockbuster. What are you doing sitting at home on your iPhone getting upset about idiots posting nonsense stuff on the internet? That's insane to me.
So there's a bit of irony in this. I'm thinking about this 2012 op-ed that you wrote that I'm sure you've heard about.
Yes, you all have the same research as you guys, because you all share
I mean, it stuck out like come on, it was like a red flag. You wrote, the internet distances us from others and feeds the traits of sociopathy, saying perhaps what's needed now is a bolder form of censure after all. If people cannot be trusted to treat one another with respect, dignity, and consideration. You wrote that.
I did. I think it's fair to say my feelings have evolved on that subject.
And how did they evolve?
Well, I think 4 years of being on Twitter and being on Facebook and watching how these companies operate, but also realizing that you know, the trolls often aren't the bad guys. Often the trolls are the only ones telling the truth.
What about an apology for maybe what your followers, because what Twitter, how Twitter sees it is that you sort of move that kind of momentum that.
Well, I'm sorry for being popular. They need new ways of making sure that people who don't want to hear from each other don't really hear from each other. My purpose is to lob bombs. My purpose is to be a fire starter, right? In an outrage culture, I think the appropriate response is to be outrageous, because what I want to do is smash political correctness. I don't want everyone to be like me, but I think it's important that there are some people like me.
Your tweets offended people. They just did. What do you say to those? What do you say to those people? I mean, it's the offensive comments that were made.
Yes, I say good. Good. If I offended you, that's me performing my function. And you should grow thicker skin and grow up. And so long as there are people who think that offense-taking and you know, having grievances is equivalent to some genuine kind of injury, I'm still necessary. You may disagree with me. That's fine. Come debate me. But so long as there is a politics in this country, as there is, where people can turn victimhood and grievance into currency, I will continue to be as offensive as possible.
Thumbs up for the go-getters, the ambitionless, appears they should know better. No debtor, we owe nothing but hard work. Inverse of Brett Favre, frying doing yard work.